Hi, I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Purpose Project. All topics are fair game. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Purpose Project, Allegra. I really appreciate you coming on to do this. You're here because I have a friend who lives in North Carolina and is helping with the hurricane relief efforts. And I asked if they know anybody who knows some stuff about the status of what's going on over there. So she connected us, and here we are to kind of get an update of what's happening, who's there, what do people need, what's untrue that we're seeing in the media, things like that. So you obviously know much more
Okay.
about this. You know a lot more about this than I do. So if there's anything that I miss, volunteer it, bring it forward. So um, I'll just go down my outline that I built up for this and say, so who are you and what are you doing there?
So my name is Allegra West. In normal times, I'm a business consultant and executive shadow work coach. In this moment, I have stepped in and I've been co-leading what is now an 850-person Telegram grassroots relief effort group. So we have different channels for every geographical area, volunteers. We're looking at supply hubs and moving supplies between hubs and just really trying to fit and fulfill every possible need that's arisen over the last 2 weeks since Hurricane Helene hit.
Okay. And is this all voluntary or are you part of an organization that's doing this?
No, this was a friend of a friend started the Telegram group and I joined it. And after a few days, I ran into him in person. I was like, hey, this is kind of exploding. Do you need help moderating and figuring out how to organize it? And he said, yes. And so then it became a group of six of us really trying to moderate and work with it. And it just exploded. It grew. And yeah, we're pushing almost 900 people now.
Wow, that's awesome. So it came together completely organically. There's not like a FEMA or a different version of like a functional version of FEMA that you guys are doing. So that's pretty incredible. So how do you guys separate geographically um, in this Telegram group? I mean, you obviously have people that are worse affected than other areas. Do you have a method for doing that?
Essentially, there's around Asheville, there's a lot of smaller towns. As with any big city, you have your suburbs and then you kind of go out from there. So as we've heard of areas that were hard impacted, we've just added a thread for each basically little city area in
Okay.
general, and that includes all of the rural spaces around that.
Okay. I'm looking at a map of it right now here. What would you say is the worst affected area? Would it be Asheville itself?
Um, well, that depends on what your definition of worst is.
Yeah.
Uh, so when it comes to physical damage, Swannanoa, which is just a little bit to the east of Asheville, was
Uh-huh.
in terms of a populous city center. Swannanoa, that's actually where I live.
Hmm.
For just the last couple months. I had just moved in and got to be at ground zero there, which was very intense. And then in terms of Asheville, is it the city is yeah, it's bad. There's definitely districts, the areas down by the river that flooded. The biggest thing there is that even though power is starting to come back on in some places, there's no water. And we don't have an ETA on when water is going to be available again, which is obviously, from a sanitation perspective, getting to be a little bit dicey.
So what
So,
is everybody?
but then if you look at the outlying, yeah, sorry. As
Oh no,
yeah, I
you're
just wanted
no,
to add like the
yeah.
outlying areas in the rural areas is where some of the worst infrastructure wise damage has happened because entire roads are gone that have blocked off communities from being able to receive aid. So that's a
Okay.
different type of bad. At
Yeah.
least, in Swannanoa, the bridges went out and landslides and it took away entire trailer parks, of course, and just washed away homes. But we were able to get in and get aid to the people in that area within a couple days versus
Mhm.
in some of the farther out locations like Burnsville and Batcave and Girton, when it took out the roads, those people were completely cut off from being able to get aid. So we've been having to airdrop supplies into them.
Is there any location that has not yet received aid that you're aware of?
Yes and no. So that's actually the purview of someone else on my team. She's been working directly with an ex-Special Forces group to try and track down those places. We've been overlaying maps with weather projections and roads, trying to really find the places where we don't know that somebody's missing because they just don't have cell service and they're just off the map because there's so many little valleys and hollers out here that it's actually kind of hard to tell, have we not heard from these people because they were missed, or have we not heard from these people because they don't have power and they can't access a road?
Yeah.
It's really bizarre out here because there are areas that didn't really get hit at all within and on either side it's absolute devastation.
Okay.
So the
So
the
there's
weather does funky microclimate things.
so there's pockets and islands of places that haven't been touched, and then vice versa, ones that have. That group that you're referring
Yeah.
to, is that Save Our Allies?
Um, I don't think so. No, it's a different
Okay.
one.
Very cool. Yeah, I've seen a lot of those guys going
Yeah.
down there. It's very it gives hope in this type of a situation. Now, what has your interaction been with like all of these different groups? Because I'm sure I know somebody who has a friend who was loading up a trailer and going to drive over there to deliver stuff. So there's tons of different groups and individuals that are just trying to help out. Now, what is can you list some or all of the groups that you guys are working with, or are there too many?
Oh, there's way too many. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's we do have documents where we've tried to list as many as we can find.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many, and there's more pouring in every day, although obviously it's slowed down quite a bit now. But I ran into a new one out on the road the other day. They were handing out little solar lights and water filtration bags, which was amazing. They're named
Hmm.
Third Wave, and they were just the sweetest people. The gentleman said it was their 691st disaster that they had been there volunteering for. So yeah.
Wow. Been around the block with those. That's awesome. I'm glad there's somebody out there doing that. Um, so it's not necessarily a matter of we don't have enough supplies for people. It's just getting the supplies to the people that's the biggest roadblock. Okay. Now, are there people
Yeah,
going,
yeah, that's really been it. Go ahead.
sorry, there's a little bit of a delay here. So I've heard that there's people going in with trucks, with horses, helicopters, drone drops. I'm sure there's all different forms of delivery. And yeah, I guess that's all I have about that. Just wanted to mention that it's really cool to see that there's people riding horses into these places to deliver supplies to people. It's an amazing, awesome thing. Now, when it comes to FEMA, I have some questions about FEMA. If you have interacted with FEMA or if you know anybody who has.
Yes.
What's that
I
been like?
haven't interacted directly, but I've spoken. Yeah, there's the good and the bad of it, of course. I think they're doing the best that they can. And there are aspects where it's been a hindrance to people getting what they need. And I think they're also doing an amazing job in bringing in lots of aid. But I have experienced where they came in, actually the hub, there was a park that is the closest park to my house, so this is my direct experience. that was just down the road. So as we came out and were, looking around at the devastation, we set up basically picnics in the park. There was a water station where they were cleaning water, and we were grilling. Everybody brought out all of the food from their fridges, and we had a big community cookout with all of the stuff that was going bad. And then from there, over the following days, it developed into a supply hub and a place where every day, our elderly and our families could come down and eat food, get their diapers and all of the supplies, water that were needed in there. And almost a week ago now, that group that was running it decided to partner with FEMA. And as a result, FEMA showed up about an hour later, took everything and shut them down and left. So that was interesting. I don't understand why, but it definitely caused a lot of heartache in terms of the people in that neighborhood being able to get food. And I've heard many other reports of it. Um, some other examples of areas where it's been, I understand kind of why, but also, there was a group of my friend, her father came up from Greenville with a group of guys in their ATVs, side by sides, 4x4 trucks. They found a neighborhood that had logs down over the road. They had chainsaws and things. And they were just who hadn't been contacted yet. They had been working with a local church that said, we haven't gotten anybody up here. We want to look for them. And FEMA came in and asked them if they were willing to go to jail that day over it, and they said yes. And they proceeded to attempt to go out and just door knock to check on people and chainsaw trees out of the road and go up into this area to check on everyone. And they got backup that came out and escorted this entire group of humans back to the South Carolina border under guard, and would not let them go check on these people and these neighbors. So there's also been many reports of them turning away trucks, not allowing supplies to enter, and things like that.
Hmm. That sounds like it's criminal in nature to me, and it sounds like, from my lack of being there, lack of perspective, that just sounds like those people at FEMA need to be removed and let us handle our own business as we the people, as the Americans.
Yeah. I've heard some interesting accounts from so for example, the Barnardsville area, which is about 20 minutes north of Asheville, has an amazing system going on. They've been running daily check-ins at the post office. Everybody comes down. They have basically a command headquarters. They have lists of who needs what, in terms of trees on houses and trees removed and bridges repaired and things like that. And they're running a command center. And I heard them say that that FEMA showed up and saw what they were doing, and they were already, bunch of other redneck hillbillies out there with their big excavators and equipment fixing the roads, getting everybody out. And FEMA looked at it and said, wow, this is the best grassroots response we've ever seen. Carry on, we're not needed here. And they got out of the way and went to the other places where, they triaged, were needed their help, because there are so many places where they were desperately needed that didn't have the organization. So that being said, I would say I think they are helping in the best way that they know how. And I also, I've heard many accounts of potentially other underlying motives for profit and things of that nature, which, I don't want to speak to, but I
Right.
do understand that they're trying to keep everybody safe. And in some of these places where bridges and roads have washed out, people going in who don't have knowledge and understanding could just be another rescue mission instead of rescuing someone else. So I do understand that part.
I see. I see. Thank you for providing both perspectives to that. That is really hard for me to not get angry about. I have, so many questions about that, how FEMA operates and who these people are, but we obviously don't know that. So at the end of the day, you have human beings that are making decisions, and they're making the decisions the best that they can or with some other intent, and we can't know. So, the part of me has to give them grace for that. And then the other part of me wants to say, no, maybe you should be shot and let us continue saving people's lives. So I don't really understand that, but that's infuriating. Now, when it comes to removing that group of people that they asked, are you willing to be arrested for this or to go to jail for this? What faction was it that came in to actually escort these people off? Was it county police or local law enforcement? Was it military? Who escorted these people away?
I'm not 100% sure. It was my friend's father, and he's kind of one of those taciturn men who's like, "Well, I don't know, honey. I don't know why they did it, but we needed to go along with it." And that was really all the information I got on that. So, uh, yeah, I think in large measure, I think there is an aspect like FEMA's used to working with a different sort of people. And I also on another account heard somebody from FEMA say, we've never seen a disaster response from the people in the way that Asheville is responding. The guy came in from FEMA and he's like, everybody on the street keeps asking me if I need anything and if I need help. And I've heard many accounts of this. So I think potentially, the Southern hospitality out here is a little bit different from what happens in major cities where there's a lot of looting and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. That makes sense. Yeah, it's less selfish that way. And I guess coming from that perspective, if I'm working for FEMA and most of what I've dealt with is situations where there's rioting or looting or chaos, then that's probably going to be my assumption going in. So maybe to prevent people from, I don't know, this group of guys going up to knock on doors, I mean, it could just have been one perspective shift or one degree of perspective shift, and they're actually trying to help. So that's tough. That's a tough situation. Um, when it comes to the $750 thing, do you know about that relief, like hurricane relief?
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of it, and many people are applying for it.
So these people that are applying for it, they must have internet access or something, a phone that works.
Yeah. Yeah, so cell service is up spottily. We're still on the roaming networks kind of thing, so it kind of depends on where you are. But a lot of people there have been Starlinks brought in and set up in a lot of major places.
And
So,
that's awesome.
yeah, that's many questions about that because, a few months ago, pretty much all of us are like, keep that stuff out of our space. We don't want it. And now suddenly, everybody who did not want Starlinks before, they're everywhere.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's there's so many directions we could go with just that alone, but for the sake of time and the topic, we'll stick to the hurricane stuff. But there was one. Well, let me ask you actually. Have you? I don't expect that you're the type of person that surfs social media. However, what kinds of things have you seen or heard on the internet or on social media or through the grapevine that you know isn't true or feel has been twisted?
Hmm. Mostly what I see on social media because I very intentionally curate my feed for the things that I want to see is all of the stories of us helping each other because the response out here has been truly, absolutely heartwarming and amazing. So
Hmm.
that's most of what I see, especially because it's all of my local friends out there doing it. I definitely have seen some fear tactics. I'm trying to remember oh yeah, the one about oh goodness, just went out of my head about them eminent domaining the entire town of Chimney Rock.
Yeah, for lithium,
Uh,
right?
and it was very much a third person. It was like a friend of a friend's mother's friend kind of a thing. It was a very unreliable source, and unfortunately, it blew up like wildfire, and everybody's sending it to each other in a moment when all of our nervous systems are jacked through the roof. We're all in fight or flight, and to have that kind of thing go viral was actually very negatively impactful to our efforts of trying to help people, which was really unfortunate because I got it from like six people all at once, and I took one look at it, and it was so obvious how unreliable of a source it was.
Hmm. Okay, and this is
So
this is the
that's
idea.
that's really the main one that I've seen.
This is the rumor that they're trying to take over that area for the sake of lithium underground.
Now, I can't comment on whether or not that is true or not, but
Okay.
the rumor that all of Chimney Rock was being eminent domain and that they were just bulldozing over bodies, excuse me, and things like that, that's not true.
Okay.
Um, whether or not there is an aspect of a desire to take over and, change the hands of ownership of certain land around here,
Yeah.
no comment.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. I feel you there. On the topic of bodies, there I got a few questions about that. Do you know if there is a count of like this many corpses or this many people missing, or what was the other one I have? Yeah, just we'll do that for now. Do you know how many people have died or not been found?
I don't know. I really, and I've listened to a broadcast on the way home. Just this, I was like, let me turn on the radio. Let's do this old-fashioned thing. And I did hear them saying that they cannot release any numbers until it's done because they don't want to hurt any families. For people who are still in fear, they're still missing their loved ones. They don't want to release any numbers one way or the other until they can confirm with the family, right? Letting next of kin know before they understand. Like, for example, I did watch people pass away in Swananoa where I was. And I've had many people ask me to share my story. And it took me a minute because I needed to make sure that their family was notified before I shared their story and they saw it on the news. And
Yeah.
so I definitely understand that concern. What I will say is that it is way higher than they're estimating and way higher than they're saying. I remember seeing back a week and a half ago a number of about 12,000 people missing. Now, that number is obviously I would want to temper that because a ton of those people were people who were just sitting in their homes with no cell phone service, you know, cooking beans over a fire. Like, so they were missing because they hadn't had cell phone service and there was a tree across their driveway,
Yeah. They just couldn't be accounted
or they
for in
were,
that
I
situation.
personally,
Yeah.
exactly. I personally have a friend who I have three or four friends who are on the missing persons list, and they were in the middle of downtown Nashville serving hot meals to people. They just didn't have cell phone service to let their daughter in another state know.
Yeah.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
I think I don't agree if they have a body count and they refuse to release that number for the sake of, protecting people's from fear. I disagree with that. Now, I'm not saying you should name names or anything, but if you know there are this many dead bodies that we have found, that number should be spoken, and updated along the
I
way. I
don't
mean,
have a
it's
number for that, but I can say, yeah, they update the number as they're able to have actual true identity of the remains, and B, have then notified next of kin. And then once there's a death certificate, then it gets added to the death toll
oh,
number.
okay,
Yeah, they have to confirm who it is in order to count it. Otherwise, it's a John Doe, I guess. At the end of the day, I know that they are going to count it, but what I can say is that I do know people who are currently out there still recovering bodies. There's actually a good friend who just posted a post on Instagram today, of his location and where he is. They're out there with the rescue efforts and they're using dogs and they're having to dig with excavators. I heard tell from one of the volunteer groups that went out a couple days ago that they were digging 12 feet deep into the mud and silt to recover bodies. from the river.
Um,
So there are definitely people who will never be found.
yeah. No. Uh, do you know if there is any kind of a number estimate of either, probably not people at this point if you can't account for a lot of people, or if there's a square mileage estimate of places without power or without running water or both? Is that being tracked accurately?
I'm Yes and no. I mean, I just found out today from talking to somebody who's here around the fire that Boone got hit. And while they didn't lose power in the city of Boone, which is, what, 2.5, 3 hours from here, that the areas around Boone, there are many people without power and, who are stuck, and that it was also very destructive up there. And that's quite far away, and I had no idea until now, 14 days later, that they even haven't had an issue.
Yeah.
So granted, that's my personal knowledge, but yeah, there's still a lot of people out there without power that we're not really aware of. We're trying to overlay maps of, records of national forest and rule those places out, of course, because there aren't many people living in there. But it's a process, and a lot of
Yeah.
that information still being kept, kind of behind closed doors, just because
Control.
we don't. Yeah, well, and because we don't know. We don't know if they actually got hit or not.
Hmm.
I'm sitting in a place, I'm technically the address I'm at is in Marshall, and I'm sure you've probably seen pictures and images. Downtown Marshall flooded, and is completely, destroyed. And
Yeah.
I'm 20 minutes from there, but just on the other side of the hill, and nothing happened here. There's not a single downed tree on the property. It's
Wow.
it's actually there's a cognitive dissonance to be this close to the destruction and have there be nothing. So we don't know what we don't know at this point still.
Yeah. Okay. Um, have you seen any National Guard out there?
Yeah, absolutely. They've been all over, especially in Asheville proper, and out in the areas where the roads are completely washed away.
Okay, so from what I've seen on the internet, and I have seen a lot of hype about where's the National Guard? Why isn't the National Guard being sent in there? So those are false. So you've seen them personally. They are there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's frustrating. But awesome. It's awesome that they're there. That's part of what they're here for. I'm super glad that they're doing that. Now, I'm gonna go into a little bit of the other rumors, the stuff that I've seen online, just to try and clarify, like, is this really happening or is this hype? There's one thing that I saw that was like a flow of water with hundreds of alligators in it. I don't know if you've seen that or if you're aware of that, but I don't know how many alligators there are in North Carolina. I know there's a lot in Florida. What do you know about that? Zero. Okay, okay,
That's
okay. Well,
zero. There are zero alligators in North Carolina. I mean, unless they were in
okay.
somebody's bathtub, but
Right, right. Okay, cool. So I don't know what that image was that I saw. Might have been Florida. We'll skip that one. Now, the person who connected us mentioned something about people struggling with chemical burns.
yes.
What is
Yeah.
that from?
So yeah, so the French Broad River, when it flooded, there is a front from North Asheville up of about, oh, I can't even estimate, a few miles worth of industrial buildings right along the river. The main one that we know of is a PVC manufacturing plant, but there are many other things. So I don't have a full account of all of the industrial chemicals that spilled into the river. Our belief at this point right now is that it was from the PVC plant and the, organic chemicals that are used in the creation of that. So this was mainly in Marshall downtown where the water flooded up to, I don't know exactly how many feet, but you can see the lines in the images on the windows, and they have, inches to feet of mud inside their buildings. And as they began trying to shovel that out, it was incredibly toxic and was, yeah, melting through boots and shoes and things like that. And they immediately got all the volunteers out and had to get much increased PPE, protective equipment.
Yeah.
So people are in full Tyvek suits at this point and respirators. And that's why, there was a lot of criticism at first about, hey, we're still out here looking for living humans. What are you guys doing in Marshall just scooping mud out of buildings and calling for volunteers? And the reason for that was because as soon as that mud dries, it becomes dust in the air as they're trying to scoop it out, and then it becomes a very high hazard to life. So that was a one of the top priority efforts, was to get the mud scooped out.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. And when you say PVC, you're talking about the plastic piping, the plastic tubes that people use for all kinds of different stuff. A factory for that.
Yeah, it's exactly. Yeah, it's pretty wild. If you drive the river road from Woodfin up to Marshall right now, all the way along the river, caught in almost every tree and rock and bramble on the side, is just tons and tons of PVC piping. Looks like
Hmm.
little white Q-tips out there just all along the river with they're, 12 to 15-foot lengths of PVC.
Oh
Made a
yeah.
joke to a friend. They're like, "Oh man, we're not going to be able to get PVC in Asheville for a while." I'm like, just go down to the river. You have a lifetime supply. It's all free.
Yeah. You just got to climb for it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think this will be the last rumor type thing. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it comes from a source that I trust, and it's about um, the vice president going and filling a C-17 with a lot of um, needed materials and supplies for people, and doing like a photo op and a video op, and then telling the plane not to leave, not to deliver it. Are you aware of this?
I am not aware of this. I will say that they have been stopping supplies coming into the Asheville area because there have been so many. Um, and the thing that I want to say to that is it is true. There has been a giant influx of supplies. Many of our supply hubs have a lot. And there are places that we're just discovering that we're moving, supplies from one hub to the other. And so FEMA has been asking people to stop sending supplies and turning supplies away. And what I want to say to that is that this is absolutely devastation out here. And
Yeah.
while in this moment, I hope and I believe that, there is enough food accessible to people. Our grocery stores are starting to come back online, and gas is accessible again at this point, which is awesome. Yeah, we've got, and power's starting to trickle back on because linemen came in from all over the country and Canada and other places and have been out here, working night and day. I've waved out the window to so many of them. They're doing an amazing job getting us back up and online. But with that, there is the aspect that we have the attention of the world right now and everybody wants to help for a few weeks. And then it goes away and we're here for months and years. I have friends who've, lost their entire homes. They've ripped everything out. There's a giant pile of all their worldly possessions out there. And, okay, so they got some food for a week, 2 weeks, and then it's like, okay, go back to the grocery store and start buying food again. I don't know about you, but I went to the grocery store and I got one brown paper bag full of food for $100 this week because the health food store reopened, and I was like, oh my gosh, blueberries, this is so exciting.
Hmm.
But when somebody's lost everything, insurance isn't going to cover much. So I would encourage people to hold supplies and send them again in a couple of weeks, in a
Yeah.
month, because, people are going to be spending every last dollar on drywall and flooring and a new bed. And to not have to spend $6 on a jar of peanut butter, or,
Yeah.
granola bars to keep them going while they're out there working day and night to get their house put back together would be really nice. So
Yeah.
we've been working with the group that I'm in establishing warehouses where we can stockpile the goods so that we can make sure that these supply hubs keep flowing for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing a lot of people don't consider when looking at this from the outside is that, okay, yeah, this is a disaster and oh, help is coming. That's great. But, 3, 4 months from now, it's not going to be back the way it was. It's never going to be back the way that it was. And, we don't know what 3 months from now is going to
Yeah.
look like, but I think it's really wise to do what you said and continue kind of checking back in, resending supplies and doing that. So, um, let me see what else I've got here. I think that's close to what I have. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only other question that I have right now would be, what's the most helpful thing, or two questions. What's the most helpful thing that people have done so far on the outside? And then what's the most helpful thing we can do right now? Now, sending supplies is one thing, and obviously $750 is not going to be enough for people to do really much of anything at all with, especially if they have families. So, people want to help. Obviously, you're getting a huge influx of supplies. But when it comes to sending money, if this is going to be like the Canadian trucker situation, or where somebody's going to seize that money instead of give it to who we are trying to get it to, where can we reliably send money to that's actually going to go to people that need it, if there's even places that money can be spent?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'm one person, and there are so many nonprofits here, so many charities. That's a big one. I'm sure I've seen all kinds of lists on the news of if you want to donate, go to all of these places. Personally, I am connected to a wonderful gentleman who has offered up his relatively unrelated 501(c)(3, and all donations that come into that he is funneling to us to help get out to the community, and trusting a group of us here who are on the ground, who are doing the best we can to find all of the people who have lost their homes. I think people's individual GoFundMe's, and a lot of us, especially Asheville's an artist community. There are so many artists who just lost everything, and most of us have put up, whether it's a GoFundMe or even just personal Venmos. And I know people feel really uncomfortable donating to personal Venmos, but it's an awesome way where it gets directly to the people we care about. So for people on social media, if they see people posting saying, "Hey, I just lost my studio, I just lost my kitchen," the farmers markets that I normally sell at, there people don't have the money to spend at them right now, and all of those things, giving to people directly is an amazing way to be of service in this way, because I had an elderly woman who was like, all these people out here, these kids just filming the destruction for TikTok. And I'm like, it's beautiful that they're filming the destruction for TikTok. And yeah, they may be getting money into their bank accounts, but they're local. They live here. Their entire income just went away. And if they're getting money in, then, maybe they're going to buy the handmade body butter that, I made last week. Right? So
Yeah.
resources, cash is king at this point.
Okay.
In
And
this
then,
moment, cash is king. I can send you a link to the 501(c)(3 that I'm working with directly, that I know is trustworthy, that it's going to get to the people who are rebuilding, day in and day out, volunteers on the ground, and families that have lost everything in their
y-
businesses.
yeah, definitely. Please send me that, and then I'll post it in the notes when this episode publishes in the next couple of days. And then, as people are, filming stuff with their phones and putting it on TikTok, I think that that's a good thing, mostly because I don't see media coverage as much as I think there should be of this event. It's not as widespread. I don't know how many journalists or news crews you've seen running around there, but I don't expect it would be a lot. So it's great to get kind of that personal, hey, look what's happening in my backyard video from, 1,000 different people. So
Yeah, it's impactful. I know I've posted them on my Instagram and I've had people reaching out to me from all over the world. And, I appreciate every little donation that's been made to me because my life has been completely put on hold. I don't know if or when I'll be, I mean, obviously if, but I have no idea when this is going to move to the side enough for me to feel, even right picking up my business again. And, I was serving the business owners of this area. And at this point, all I want to do is be of service. And so, when people send me $50 for gas, it's deeply appreciated. It allows me to keep serving people and keep showing up to try and help organize volunteers and figure out how we put things back together and build them in a way where we have more sovereignty so that if anything like this ever happens again, we don't necessarily need FEMA to come in and take care of us.
that's ideal right there. That would be the goal. um, Now, I think
Yeah.
that's all I have. I thank you so much for doing this. Is there other stuff that I haven't thought of or considered that you have that you'd like to share?
Mhm. I think that's really it. The big thing that I would just love people to know is that this is going to be a very long process. And, all of the help that we can get is deeply appreciated. I know
Yeah.
the groups that I'm working with are looking at, we don't want to build back better. We don't even want to rebuild. We want to build the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. Thank you, Charles Eisenstein, for that. But we're really trying to look at like how do we build in infrastructure that allows us to be connected and supported like this at all times. The outpouring of love and support that's happening right now is truly beautiful. And we're trying to figure out how we can ground this into our daily lived experience here because that's what's really what makes this place special.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
So
beautiful. Well, Allegra, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I'll get some of that info from you here in a few minutes so that I can post it up.
awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Good luck out there.